on YouTube. How weird that was that I accidentally clicked on Twitch. And here we are, I believe, live streaming on YouTube, and we're with Lynn Johnson and Sharon Baker Slack-Slider, and we are reading uh, Never Forget to Laugh, the biography of Bill Thetford, which has really been fascinating as well. And Sharon had just mentioned the, excuse me, sorry for that, the biography of Helen Schuckman, which Bruce and I are reading on uh, Saturdays, that the uh, absence from Felicity. And so it's really cool to see from both directions what was going on with Helen and with Bill. And and Lori says, people who ask why have never been deeply depressed. And yeah, it's hard for me to imagine anybody who hasn't thought about that at some point. It's hard to imagine that it isn't a common thing to think about committing suicide, because uh, th- this world is not our home, and it seems so obvious for me from the very beginning. So, this it doesn't surprise me when people do. And so many people I know who have family members and loved ones who've done that. And of course, A Course of Miracles tells us basically you die by your own choice. Every death is a suicide, because we come into this world to live and experience and learn and grow and do all the different things that we do. But eventually, we know there is a death sentence, absolutely a death sentence, to come to live in this world of form. So, but it's only the death of the little me, the body, the dream, the world. It just ends and another begins, because you cannot kill a son of God. God is eternal, and what He made is eternal and cannot die. So all we do is go in and out of different rooms, in and out of different stories, and eventually we do get tired of the story, or we you don't even have to get tired of the story. You just have to get done with the story and not need the story anymore, and the story not need you anymore. Because I think, a part of it is that the story needs me at this point. And just adjusting it. I got a heating pad that goes on the back of it's supposed to go on my shoulders, but I put it on the back of my chair because I think before, that this room is not heated and has a partially open window. And we got some snow last night, so it's kind of chilly in here. So I try to, I'm all wrapping up in my blanket, my sweet um, uh, giraffe blanket that Brooklyn sent me for Christmas, and just stay warm. So here we go. So we're in Never Forget to Laugh, Personal Recollections of Bill Thetford, a co-scribe of A Course in Miracles. And of course, it's by Carol Howe, who's a lovely lady who's still with us. And it's great, I think, for us to remember to cherish those ones who are still with us, who were there in the beginning, who had been there through the first growing years of A Course in Miracles community, and through all the publications of the different books and versions and stories and all the different stuff that's gone on. Um, you know, we're we're kind of very lucky to be here in this generation, and to be able to meet these people like Carol Howe and Ken Wapnick and Dove Fishman. It's uh, such a gift for us. So we're reading about when uh, Bill had already left New York, and so he was living in Tiburon, but he was visiting back and forth with Carol in Denver, Colorado. And so he would go and stay with Carol for a while, and they'd do different things. Then they'd go back to Tiburon and do different things. And he worked with Jerry John Palsky and uh, a lot of the pioneers of the Course of Miracles as we experience it here in this world and in this day. So, so I'm going to start at the top of this page. In Denver in late 1979, six of us, this just blows me away because I was living in in a suburb of Denver in 1979, and wow, just to think Bill Thetford and all these people were there, and I had no idea, not a clue. Um, so anyway, in Denver in late 1979, six of us interested in attitudinal healing formed a center based on Jerry's Center for Attitudinal Healing in Tiburon. 4 years earlier, Jerry had felt called to provide a forum for practicing the insights gleaned from ACIM. He established a program based on its principles for children with catastrophic illnesses. Several other groups and/or individuals were so impressed by Jerry's experiment that they modeled centers after his. The Center for Creative Alternatives in Denver was either the fourth or fifth center established, and Bill sat on our board of directors, the only other board of any kind he was part of besides the Tiburon Center. Um, in the mid 1970s, the idea of lay people substantively helping one another was a new idea. Jerry pioneered the formation of lay support groups, and within a short time after implementing his ideas, support groups sprang up like mushrooms. And I've got to say for sure, Choose Again, which is Diedrich Wolsack, who had gone through Jerry Jampolsky's Attitudinal Healing Center and started his own organization, which is extremely helpful and based on A Course in Miracles. Uh, People with all sorts of issues and problems go to Diedrich either in Costa Rica or in Vancouver or in British Columbia, or as Sharon and I went to one of his workshops in Colorado. He came to Colorado to and did a workshop here. Diedrich did, and it's based on the teachings of Jerry Jampolsky from Attitudinal Healing. And then later, after I was so impressed by that work, I went out to San Francisco to the conference the attitudinal healing. Jerry Jampolsky's I think it was his 80th birthday. Anyway, it was his birthday, and they did a training which I attended. The training and became certified to run these attitudinal healing circles as he had set up. And in that group, there was a young man who was in the original uh, groups that Jerry had put together for children, and it was children with cancer and polio and all sorts of catastrophic illnesses. And this young man had been in his original as a child in his group, so it was just really amazing to see how this work from A Course in Miracles, and is all based on the Course. This work on the Course in Miracles had turned into a healing center for people with all sorts of issues, not just children. He did start with children, but then, of course, bloomed out into uh, uh, regional, different groups. Like Diedrich came together and set up their sites, and then also. Um, I forget where I was going with that. Anyway, so I went and learned to become a facilitator for these circles, and and basically never actually did it because we kind of moved it into part of what we did with Dove and Cheryl uh, Kaplan with the circles, but basically that's That was all started from Jerry Dompolsky from A Course in Miracles. And of course, oh, and the prison groups also. There actually were, groups that just go into the prisons and do healing circles with people in prison, and all based on A Course in Miracles. But Jerry's work didn't specifically talk about A Course in Miracles. It was just based on the principles of A Course in Miracles. So that was kind of what he was doing. So apparently, Bill Thetford was in on that and hung out with Jerry. And yeah, I did get to meet Jerry Jampolsky. And unfortunately, I did not get to meet Carlos Santana, who was a student of Jerry Jampolsky. And in fact, when I first this is craziness. I'm just going to tell this real quick story. It has nothing to do with any of this, but since I'm doing it, I might as well talk about it. I had been wanting to interview Jerry and Diane for Gather. And so I tried calling Jerry, or not Jerry, but Center for Attitudinal Healing in San Francisco, or it's not actually in San Francisco, but it's in that area. So anyway, I had tried calling him one day, and I called the number that was listed on the website, and the phone rang, and this gentleman answered the phone, and I said, hello, and I said who I was, and it was Jerry Jampolsky, and Jerry and Diane were in Hawaii. This is crazy. They were in Hawaii on vacation. He had just gotten off the phone with Carlos Santana because Carlos Santana, and Jerry and Diane and Carlos's wife also did the workbook lesson every day. So they would talk to each other on the phone and do the workbook lesson together. And he had just gotten off the phone with Carlos, and the phone rang, and it was me. And I was calling the San Francisco Operations Center, and somehow or the other, it patched through to Jerry's personal phone. So we talked and talked about what I'd like to do, and he invited me to come to this conference in San Francisco. This is how I ended up going there. Was that Jerry Jampolsky sponsored me to go out there to the conference and to take the training to become certified. So how these things happen, I just don't know. It just was crazy. I flew out there and, got to meet Jerry and Diane and see some really, amazing, amazing Course in Miracles teachers, and, do this amazing technology. Anyway, so all that it was based on A Course in Miracles. So, and Jerry's idea was that if you teach everybody how to do this, then they can go in their own communities, they can go in their family, they can do it with other people and bring this healing to the world. And it's brilliant, and it actually works very well. So anyway, I'm going to continue reading. So when we held our center's grand opening in April 1980, Jerry and Bill joined us. Jerry made a wonderful presentation, as always, and Bill remained unobtrusively in the background, but definitely present, adding substance to the occasion. We deeply appreciated his willingness to support our endeavor. During the reception afterward, he had a chance to mingle with the Denver students, which gave him yet another opportunity to witness A Course in Miracles' impact firsthand and to hear more of its effect on changing people's lives. Our center started with a handful of support groups, as well as what turned into A Course in Miracles classes. Although they were originally established as volunteer training classes. Seeking to learn from challenges Jerry had faced, we clearly stated that the services and groups offered were based on principles from A Course in Miracles, not on a smorgasbord of potentially competing theories. We presumed we would make mistakes, but at least they wouldn't be the same ones he had encountered. We wanted to practice course principles with children or adults with catastrophic illnesses, as Jerry was successfully doing, and in addition, to include anyone in crisis or transition, anyone whose lives seem unfulfilled. Thus, we decided to conduct a volunteer training series so those who chose to join us would know what we stood for. Offhandedly, we announced that the series would also be available to anyone wishing to learn more about A Course in Miracles. To our surprise, only a few wanted to be volunteers, but many were interested in learning about the course. Some apparently wanted to read it but found it difficult. Our A Course in Miracles overview series, a retooled version of our volunteer training program, provided clarity about the course's philosophy, how it worked, what it was and was not for, making the material much more accessible. Although not designed as a substitute for practicing A Course in Miracles, our classes made it easier to take the first steps of self-study, its original purpose. Beginning in February 1980, we facilitated the series many times during the 1980s, spawning further study groups for those who wanted to continue group work. It was a great example of proceeding in one direction only to find you have been rerouted elsewhere. Though not our original game plan, the classes turned out to be important venues for teaching what we needed to learn and as a preparation for chapters not yet dreamed of. All right, I'm just going to stop for a minute. Does anybody want to have any questions or have any thoughts? Or Sharon, do you want to say anything? Or uh, I'm just finding this really fascinating. And let's see, I don't have the participant list up, so I don't know if anybody put up their hand. Okay, all right. Well, if anybody has any thoughts or they'd like to share anything, please feel free to put your hand up. I'd love to hear from you. Um, it just what just amazes me about this, and again, I'm talking about me, is that it's so aligned with my nature. It's so aligned with what I felt like I was made to do was to share and to join with groups of people and to be to help heal groups of people. And so, this is what Jerry Jampolsky, his view, his idea was, and it moved into not just the healing circles that they were trained to do, but now they're doing classes on A Course in Miracles, and people are becoming interested in wanting to learn more about A Course in Miracles. So I love that. Okay, so I'm going to continue reading. Jason Kane and I originally taught the overview series, and a class was in progress during one of Bill's visits. As we prepared for the evening, we asked him if he wanted to stay at home or attend the class. I want to come, he answered, but don't tell anyone who I am. We promised not to disclose his identity, but were certain that someone would find him out. For most of his life, I think Bill was honestly unaware that people recognized something unique about him, and he thought if he didn't say anything, his anonymity would be protected. Since his name was common enough, we introduced him simply as Bill, a friend visiting from out of town and attending just that one night. The classes were long, from 7:30 to 10 o'clock and often beyond, with a break in the middle. Sure enough, suspecting this was not an ordinary course student, people asked during the break, "Who is that guy anyway?" We repeated our story that he was a friend visiting for a few days, which was accurate but incomplete. Sensing something unusual, they started to talk to him, and predictably, as he was drawn into conversation, the secret eventually came out, as he was unwilling to lie when the questions became more probing. He still didn't participate outwardly in any way. However, even after being discovered, class members asked questions, but not of him. I always found it hilarious that he thought he could sit there unnoticed, radiating his light in the middle of the class. Although Bill and I had shared a platform on a few, I just can't imagine. And I wonder, has anyone had the occasion to come in contact with, meet somebody, um, just walk by somebody in the street, or see somebody, somewhere, or meet a friend of a friend and find them to be compelling in a way that does not just normally attraction as people, but that there was really something special about them, but they didn't reveal what that specialness was. It wasn't something that was uh evident to other people maybe, but you saw it or knew it. I've had that happen on many occasions with people that, uh, just I would just see them and just fall in love. And I have a feeling that seeing Bill Thetford would have been one of those occasions for me that I would have been. Um, it just seems like it would be someone I'd be highly attracted to and would want to be around and become friends with. Just that kind of person. Okay, so continuing to read. Although Bill and I had shared a platform on a few occasions before and after those classes, I had never taught one with him in the audience. Having Bill there was as a smiling student was somewhat unsettling. It felt approximately like preaching the Sermon on the Mount with Jesus sitting in the third row. On subsequent visits, I got used to it. Um, let's see. Oh yeah, so I'm just going to say this. Lori posted here. I once saw Jane Fonda in an auditorium where I was sitting about 10 rows back. Her energy lit up the room. Of course, she's famous, but evolved people have that energy exactly. And yes, and yeah, you experience that energy from somebody, and I mean, I've had experienced being having a person just like lift me up out of myself and into a whole new realm of being, not for a long time, but long enough that I definitely noticed a big shift, just from the presence of that person, or something, that a blessing from that person. Anyway, so I can just imagine that he would have been radiating that kind of attraction. So anyway, on subsequent visits, I got used to it, but the first time was challenging to say the least. Hugh Prather commented that Bill would also faithfully attend his or Jerry's presentations when they were in Tiburon, and was always interested in what they had to say. Hugh felt Bill genuinely thought he could learn something from him. See, this is the thing. Bill knew he could learn something from them. Bill knew that every single one of them was the same thing he was. Bill didn't see himself as being separate, apart, different person just because he happened to be in the right place at the right time, having the right profession, getting the right phone call from, some mysterious woman, deciding to hire her and becoming a co-scribe of this amazing car. He didn't know that. He wasn't like, thinking, "Oh, I'm special because of this." Bill knew he was just a normal guy who had this blessing that was uh, uh, bestowed on him, such an incredible gift. But he also knew that Jerry was one of those guys too, and so was Hugh Prather. We all know who those guys are. But it's not just Jerry and Hugh. It's not just, it's us. It's every single one. That's why, no matter what anybody says, how, you might want to go hang out with other teachers, fine and, good and wonderful. And, we all love to, go listen to Keith Kavanaugh or Leon Russell or whatever. But the fact is, we're not listening to them as, as student and master, we're there to be with them as equal to equal, being the same thing, and knowing that each one of us has that same energy and that same connection, that we're interchangeable, seriously interchangeable. That's why this is so important to me, to help people to see that you are the Holy Son of God and a perfect teacher. When anybody comes in here, it was the first thing Dove did, and I learned it from him, Dove Fishman, just saying, hey, take your time, pick up the mic, take your place among the teachers of God, because he knows that we are. And Bill knew that they were. They didn't know it because they were seeing him as being something different and something special. But he knew it because he knew what he was. He knew who they were. This is, God saved me from thinking that my brother is someone other than who they are. They are the Son of Christ, the Son of God, the Holy Son of God. Yeah, and exactly. Everyone is equal, Mickey says, and all expressions of love are maximal. That's you, me, that's us. You're right. I love that. And that's why, please, if you don't already, which I think about everybody that's in here does, but if you don't already, take your place, come on over. There's plenty of hours in the day. And I'm, my mind is going, yeah, but you can't handle more of my own time. No, I would love it. So please, yeah, check the schedule out, take your place. Okay. So anyway, continuing on. Um, just as teaching with Bill or having him in the audience was a stretch for me, and standing before a group challenging for him, any person willing to confront conditioning, long-held beliefs, and fear of the unknown is courageous. Every small step of self-discovery requires determination, and the course comforts and encourages us as we take them. So did Bill, because he was living a course of miracles. He was a living course of miracles. All right. Anybody have anything they want to say? Or
Lynn, if you want me to take a little bit more, I can.
if you want to read, yeah, that's fine with me. I'd love to hear your voice and
I,
your thoughts about these things as well.
well, here's the thing. I'm just gonna I'll be right back, okay?
Okay. All right. I'm just going to keep reading, and whenever you're ready, let me know, because we still have an hour after this too. So we're going to be going on to chapter 15. So plenty of time here. All right. So continuing with our book. Collaborating with Jules Feingold on several books, both Jerry Jampolsky's and their own, had been Bill's first project on settling into his new life. That collaboration extended to include Pat Hopkins, Hugh Prather, and after Helen's death, Bob Scutch. Bill continued some of his own writing. He and Roger Walsh co-authored a revised version of the chapter on personality theory for the comprehensive textbook on psychiatry. Yeah, that is some creative writing. I love it. It's just amazing to imagine, Bell Thetford was writing a chapter on personality theory. He also I mean, that would be real interesting based on what the Course in Miracles says about our personality. I love it. He also started a novel, but it never went anywhere. Years earlier, more than one psychic reading told Bill he would be living by the water someday, writing children's books with cartoons. Naturally, with his background, he found that the most unlikely of predictions. But there he was, organizing Jerry's book, Love is Letting Go of Fear, which included many cartoons to illustrate relevant points about the course. And I don't know if anybody has read that book, and I know a lot of people who read that book. That's how they found about A Course in Miracles. So, Love is Letting Go of Fear is a great, great book. His attention to detail and long history of voluminous writing and editing was very helpful to Jerry and added substantively to his books. Jerry even asked him if he wanted to be listed as a co-author, but Bill declined. That's why nobody knew. He was still dodging the spotlight. There was plenty on his plate besides writing. Just as his friends wanted to support and nurture him, Bill, in turn, was consistently and generously available for all his close friends, particularly Jerry. Being helpful to Jerry, who was going through some trying times, was a major reason for his moving to California. Years later, as he became less of a project for Bill, and here I just realized something. Oh, sorry, Nigel. There we go. I forgot to to put the sound in gather. I'm sorry, guys. All this long time. All right. Uh, okay. All right. So years later, as he became less of a project for Bill, Jerry jokingly mused that he wasn't sure if Bill had reduced his ministrations because he thought he had succeeded or because he was a hopeless task. Jerry knew perfectly well, of course, how much Bill cared for him. In Tiburon, in addition to focusing considerable time on writing and self-reflection, Bill served on the board of directors for the Center for Attitudinal Healing, where some issue or relationship often seemed to require his wise counsel. For several months, he also devoted time to being interviewed for a video history of A Course in Miracles, though that first attempt was never released commercially. A couple of years later, a BBC producer who was a friend of Judy's directed the video, The Story of A Course in Miracles, which involved more time-consuming filming of Bill telling his story. He also had the daily 9 o'clock meetings at Jerry's, attended a weekly course group, and had countless meetings with new people he met through Jerry or Judy. New people met through Jerry or Judy should be emphasized because they occupied no small portion of his time. Jerry was the quintessential Pied Piper, drawing people to Tiburon from all over. Some were interested in learning about his center, and some were intrigued with him. When I entered the scene, the center was 3.5 years old and had already attracted major national publicity. Its star was on the rise, and any household over which Judy presides is always a three-ring circus at the very least. The edition of New Realities magazine that first announced A Course in Miracles to the world also featured an interview with Judy. And this is from New Realities magazine. And I'm pretty sure that was New Realities magazine that was interviewing Helen in that famous interview that we have a little short snippet of. Excuse me. As president of the Foundation for Inner Peace, Judith R. Sketch's life in the 1970s can best be summarized as a typical day in her consciousness exploratorium salon in the Sketch's large New York City apartment. In one room, a motion picture is being screened to a group interested in biofeedback. In another are seekers deep in meditation training. In still another room, a medical research meeting is in progress. This is very interesting. Sketch herself seems to be in all places at once as she juggles 3 telephones, connecting people in the consciousness field to each other. And at any given moment, one might find an Edgar Mitchell, who was an astronaut, a Swami Muktananda, or a Uri Geller on hand, not to mention the usual assortment of mediums, mystics, and scientists, or just friends of friends. To a first-time visitor, it seems a miracle that such a petite lady can keep all of this going at once, in addition to often serving her home-cooked dinners to those gathered. So that's interesting. That's Tam Morgan, her mom, and how she grew up. I mean, she must have. Well, I talk about a person that had a lot of experiences. Wow, that girl, uh, she's fascinating. Continuing with Carol's book. When the sketches moved to Tiburon, Judy's inclination for gathering those at the leading edge of consciousness exploration continued unabated, and their home continued to be the headquarters for the Foundation for Inner Peace. When Judy and her current husband, William Whit Whitson, established their home, the foundation functions were divided between their household and Bob's sketches. When Judy and Whit began overseeing the foreign language translations of A Course in Miracles, um, and here she says 18 have been published. I think it's like 27 now, or maybe more, and 6 more in the process. With all the busyness and drama that compromised only one ring of the ongoing circus. Thus, Jerry and Judy, with their respective households and organizations, were responsible for legions of people, friends, family, and extended family, the famous and unknown movers and shakers of the consciousness movement, those who wanted to offer help, curiosity seekers, and more, streaming through Tiburon. And Sharon, I see that you have your hand up. I'll just finish this and
I
uh,
just want you to know that I can read whenever you want.
okay. Yeah, so I'll finish this section here and I'll turn it over to you to read. So
Okay.
thank you. Okay. So those who wanted to offer help, curiosity seekers, and more, streaming through Tiburon. They often included Bill in various activities, either to make sure he felt included and welcome in his new environs, or because they sought his advice and counsel. He was one busy fellow. Judy's daughter, Tammy, remembers. I noticed that when Bill moved to California, he began to relate to many more people in the playful manner that he had always related to me. It was as though the more he practiced the course and the further he got from his old establishment life in New York, the more he let loose his indomitable, charming, childlike self. And that's the Bill Thetford that we see and hear. And I have an interview with him as well, or not an interview, but a talk that he gave at a seminar. And he is just so playful. Reminds me a lot of Dr. Hawkins, the way he just laughs and jokes, and Ken, who laughed and joked. And he was having a good time. He was having a good time. All right, I'm going to turn the mic over to you, Sharon, and let you read a while.
Okay. After graduation, I didn't see Bill for long intervals. Whenever we did see each other, it was usually some special occasion or dinner party my mother was orchestrating. And as much as the location and our lives were different, the situation still seemed the same. And we comfortably slipped in our playful roles with each other. We once again became participants in a never ending dinner party in which guests and conversations altered. But the dessert was always chocolate, and Bill would continue somehow to make everything seem more palatable for me. When I was in Tiburon, aside from visiting with many people and having long discussions with Bill, I would assist him with organizing and editing Jerry's work, beginning with a packet of 18 cards featuring commentaries on course lessons. Particularly helpful to Jerry, now expanded to book form. To give is to receive. An 18-day mini course on healing relationships. You know, it's funny because I bought Love is Letting Go of Fear when I was like 30. And I bought A Return to Love then too. So the course comes into our awareness sometimes without realizing that spirit is getting us ready, because I just loved Jerry. I loved his story. I loved his wit. I just thought he was great. So anyway, Jerry's full-length book, Love is Letting Go of Fear, was Bill's next collaborative project with him, and I occasionally joined him in that effort. At the least, it was another way to spend quality time in each other's company. We enjoyed socializing with others of the Tiburon group and with Jules in charge towards San Francisco or the more scenic rural parts of Marin country. There was never a lack of interesting people to meet or things to do, but relating was what really mattered. And that's true. You know, when I met Nikki, we were talking about groups and we were saying that, fellowship is important because we're not people, but connection is what we want on every level. So anyway, last but certainly not least were the really funny episodes interspersed through our time together. Bill was a born comedian and would often make hilarious comments that were inside jokes. When other people, especially visiting dignitaries, were around, he might innocently refer to something only he and I knew about, make it impossible to keep a straight face if we made eye contact. Many of his friends also experienced his delightful, playful, and irrelevant side, sharing with him personal joke or watching as he wiggled his ears while looking for serious or proper. No one could figure out how he did that. He was more than willing to lighten things up when he decided someone was being overly serious or self-important. That's the thing about the course that I love. In the seriousness, that's always the ego. Spirit is all joy. Spirit is all curiosity. Spirit has a knowing. Spirit's not interested in getting serious because why would spirit get serious, right? The call for God, why would it get serious if it already knows that it's over? So when I go into if I'm flying back into the past, I think that most spiritual teachers have to believe that they're helping you, but the reality is it's happening on its own. But the seriousness that a person has, I'll give you an example. And I love Helen Hamilton, but she would say, awakening, the most important thing. Now, again, it was a good selling thing. And is it important? Yes, but it's only happening through essence. It's not happening out there, it's happening inside. So, what I found, and the reason I was called back to the course, was because of the fact that I was starting to feel a little trauma of not getting to be completely awakened, because I heard it over and over by people in Awakening Together and Helen Hamilton. And again, that's just also ego. Why is it that I always thought that every teacher they were advanced or at least higher than I was? Well, because I'm an ego when I think that. But when you look at equality and when you look at the sameness and when you look at the fact that it's my dream, Sharon's dream, of course I'm going to be equal. You call these perceived teachers as being somebody that's helping you, but you call them in. I called them in because, and Spirit then came into readiness and said, go back to the course, because that's where I started. The 12 steps is also some place that I have a big heart for, because it got me out of hell very quickly, very quickly. In Bill's earlier California days, he was not yet driving, and several years passed before he felt comfortable enough to purchase a car and navigate around his neighborhood. In New York, he had no need to drive and hadn't owned a car more than 2 decades. That's like my son Andrew. He lived in all these big cities, and he stopped driving when he was like 19 or 20. So he lived in Boston, New York, DC, and now he's back to Philly. And honestly, he doesn't even care if he ever drives. Neither does his wife. But again, he would have to do what Bill did, which is take it slow, right? Therefore, if we want someplace further afield from Tiburon and environs, someone else drove. When it was time to return to Denver, Jules usually would take Bill and me to the airport. As Jules waited, Bill always came to the gate and stayed with me until boarding time. This was long before heightened security measures, and he seemed genuinely sorry that I was leaving. We were very close, but that didn't imply the specialness that precludes closeness to others. Over the years, he had other treasured and important relationships, okay, as well. Relating to Bill is very easy for me because what Bill had, the vulnerability to become invulnerable. How can you be invulnerable until you are vulnerable, right? Because it all feeds one another. Under the Holy Spirit's teachings, all relationships are seen as total commitments, yet they do not conflict with one another in any way. Perfect faith in each one for its ability to satisfy you completely arises only from perfect faith in yourself. And this is really coming unconsciously. Your consciousness has layers. My consciousness is layered. And until the spirit decides to take the wheel, then we are going back and forth. I mean, there were years that I would say, why is it that I can be in truth in 2 minutes, in a second I'm in the ego? That doesn't happen as much now. I can feel the difference. Even as Bill had struggled during the ACIM scribing era, feeling it was so difficult, the purifying effect was underway. The entire process of receiving and typing the material, the discussions and arguments about its meaning, and then editing, forced Bill and Helen to focus on it continually. Even when not doing the lessons or studying, they were under its influence. And by the time I met Bill, much unlearning had occurred, though it wasn't yet complete. Carol actually talks about the fact that she's still learning lessons, because this is one consciousness, one light, one mind waking up. And it's impersonal at that point. So anyway, he was becoming very clear, and being with him always felt like light and free, even when he was depressed. These down periods when he entertained the preposterous notion that he didn't have much to offer didn't keep others from enjoying his marvelous presence. He was a work in progress. And that's how I see all of us, really. Still harboring some grievances, but his loving nature was always apparent. His light still shining through, and his help unfailingly available. It is comforting to know we can be helpful even while we're still getting free ourselves. We need not and should not wait until we are entirely clear before we choose to be truly helpful, which would be like trying to remove the darkness before turning on a light. So in every moment, if we're expressions of love, then when we see a seeming brother out there, our job is to remain Brooklyn. Our job is to remain still and to love and to accept and to honor. And also to have you don't need to understand because the ego wants to understand, but the ego is definitely in on this because the ego gives us all of our beliefs, our ego. So the ego really becomes balanced. I don't know that it completely falls away. I really don't. In fact, I think because we're still in a body, it probably doesn't, but it certainly thins out. And see, Bill's saying, Carol's saying that Bill basically still had grievances, like I do. I have grievances still. Anyway, shortly after the scribing began, Bill was invited to a meeting on a subject he knew little about. For political reasons, those at the medical center felt it imperative that he attend, and he was most uncomfortable about the prospect. In an instance of synchronicity, Helen took down a passage he found extraordinarily helpful. This has been for many others since. It is often recited at the beginning of events or study groups. Whenever one needs to remember a true purpose, this is the prayer. I am here to be truly helpful. I'm here to represent him who sent me. I do not have to worry about what to say or what to do because he who sent me will direct me. I am content to be wherever he wishes, knowing he goes there with me. He will be healed as I let him teach me to heal. So always when the seeming other is there is to pay attention to my mind. Because any thought that I have for another is a thought for me, right? Bill recorded his relief on receiving that special message. This message helped me recognize that I did not have to rely on my intellectual defenses in preparing for the conference or anything else. And we're told that through the course, like spirit, when we digest all of the concepts of what the course is basically stating, the space opens. And then all of a sudden we have the presence, and that is all that's true. So I had to do was to recognize that I was there to be truly helpful and that there would be guidance and help, regardless of what the assignment might seem to be. I didn't have to plan. I didn't have to anticipate. All of this was very different. I was accustomed to planning, anticipating, having lectures, and everything worked out intellectually ahead of times. Here, I think the lesson in trust is really what is being emphasized. And trust it can't come in from the ego. It has to come in from the decision maker, the split. And we decide, well, why would we trust a mind that is just a computerized belief system, right? And a next lesson in trust made arrangements to have Christmas with us in Denver, and all four of us. They must have had a ball. We're very excited about his coming. We had planned several special treats, especially related to the seasonal celebratory music. Everything was prepared with his presence under the tree. Then the phone call. The day before his planned arrival, Jules called to say that Bill had a very serious bout of atrial fibrillation, a malfunction of the heart. We were devastated. First, out of concern for his well being, and second, because we were so looking forward to including him in what would probably have been his first family Christmas since his early childhood. Ah, the day before, Pat Hopkins, then a consultant with the Center for Attitudinal Healings, had gone by Bill's home after work at his request. They were becoming much better acquainted and had developed a routine of getting together at the close of her business. He had called her earlier in the day to say he was not feeling quite up to par, a characteristic understatement, and asked if he could take him to the hospital, which she finished work. When she finished work, his condition steadily worsened after her arrival, and she called the paramedics. They required considerable time to stabilize his acutely dangerous condition. Then they rushed him to the hospital by ambulance, no doubt. Pat saved his life. Now, did she save his life, or was she just an instrument, right? Because that's all there is. We're just these instruments for the divine will. Do you want to be a savior? What that really means is the character is meaningless, right? Because the only savior is the one. She later assumed the task of handling all paperwork related to insurance, medication, and the details of recovery, which, given his basic unfamiliarity with such matters, would have been more than overwhelming to him. She was literally a godsend. Bill returned to Denver only once or twice after his near fatal collapse. Our Center for Creative Alternatives had teamed up with Mile High Church of Religious Science in Denver to sponsor a workshop featuring Jerry and Hugh Prather. I remember Hugh Prather, I have his books. He was amazing. We had a sellout crowd, and while planning the event, Jerry and I intuitively felt we had some joint work to do. 3 weeks later, I went to Tuberin and we brainstormed about the nature of possible projects. For the next 2 years, Jerry and I worked closely together in a number of areas, which entailed frequent visits to Tiburon and ongoing contact with Bill. Thus, between 1978 and 1985, I was there many times. Okay, over to you, Lynn. Who else would like to read? Anybody?
I think we're getting close to the end here, so I'll take over and read because we only have a couple more minutes.
They all left, didn't they? Because we have this
No,
thing.
let's see who's here. Dove's here, Mickey's here, and hopefully other folks will be coming in for the next group. So
Okay.
that'll be coming up in 2 minutes. So
Okay.
and I'm just going to go ahead and close out then. And, thank you, Sharon, for joining me this morning and reading this incredible Never Forget to Laugh. And I sure wish that would latch on, but it's okay, it doesn't. I'm going to stop the screen share and go ahead.